Gosh, where do I start? I majored in computer science and I minored in Dungeons and Dragons at the University of Hawaii. And we had a group called ARG, the Alternative Recreational Realities Group of Hawaii, and we augmented the Dungeons and Dragons rules. 6 years later, I was living in Japan, and personal computers came out. That's how old I am. And I decided to write a role-playing game in Japan, the first one, because they didn't have any role-playing games. And I was like, oh, that's a hole in the market. Well, first of all, what I didn't know is that nobody played Dungeons and Dragons in Japan. So I was selling a Dungeons and Dragons game to people who have no idea what that is. And second of all, I had no idea what 64K was. So, I mean, I'd only ever done homework assignments in school. And if any of you know anything about development, 64K isn't a whole lot of memory. So I wrote a role-playing game in 64K, graphic role-playing game. Can you imagine? Anyway, it was the -- game in Japan in 1984, and I ended up having a publishing company. I wrote the first 2 games for the company, for my own company, and then I started traveling around the world looking for games to bring to Japan. And at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, I found Tetris. Now, normally what I would do at computer game shows is they'd have monitors. You know, each publisher has like, I don't know, 20, 30 monitors with all the games that they're going to publish the next year. And then you stand in line and wait for your turn to play the game a little bit. And then you stand in line again, and you know, that's where you kind of, as a publisher in Japan, have to make up your mind of which games you want to bring to Japan. Well, I stood in line for the Tetris machine, and then a couple hours later I realized I was standing on the line again, and a couple hours later again. So after 4 times there's something going on here. This game is so simple. Why the hell am I standing, in line to get to this machine for the 4th time? And so I decided to go after the game. I brought it with me back to Japan and had all my testers play. And lo and behold, all the people in my company, including the accountants, got hooked on the game. They would come down to the room and they'd all be playing. So I knew I was onto something. And I licensed Tetris for the Japanese market in 1988. For all personal computers and for the Nintendo family computer. There's a little side story about the family computer because I licensed those rights from a company called Atari Games, and I'll tell you the story a little bit further in a moment. So Atari Games, I was negotiating them by fax. Can you imagine? Those are the days of fax. Back and forth fax every once a week, and finally I got a fax saying, we've decided we're not going to license Tetris to you. And it's like, why? Why would you not do that? I mean, I'd already done all the work. I was already well along the way in developing the Tetris game for the Japanese market. We were probably a couple of months away from mastering. I told my guys, keep going. I'm going to fly to the States, to San Jose, where they're headquartered, and I'm not coming back until I have those rights. That's kind of the way I operate. So got on a plane, went to the Bay Area, and it took me 10 days, but I came away with scribble on a napkin from the president. We ended up having sushi at the end of that week, and talked him into it. So there I am, I'm publishing. Here's the interesting thing about Tetris. If you don't know what Tetris is, and you look at a box and it's Tetris, the box isn't going to convince you to buy this game. It just, what the hell is that? And so the only way that Tetris gets propagated is if somebody plays it and then shows it to somebody else, and then they get infected. and then they show it to somebody, and that's how it propagates. So anyway, Tetris is my third game on Nintendo. I've been a personal computer publisher. Third game on Nintendo, and I sent my sales guys out to all the distributors in Japan. And in order for a game to be a hit, the definition of a hit is when you get more than one order. You're set. Because it takes months to get to make the cartridges. So, and the formula for a hit is basically, if you don't sell 200,000 units in your first order, there isn't going to be a second order. That's basically how it works. So when I sent my sales guys out, and they came back and they'd gotten me 40,000 units order, I said, well, that's not enough to become a hit. Yeah, but nobody knows what Tetris is. And I said, okay, I'm going to go and meet with the president of Nintendo. By that time, I'd met him a number of times. So here I am with the Ayatollah. I call him the Ayatollah because if you disagree with Mr. Yamauchi in a meeting, if you're working for him, you're fired. That's it. You're fired. So you never disagree with the boss. And anyway, so here I am. I'm in the room with Mr. Yamauchi. Mr. Yamauchi, I don't know what it is, but whether it's my marketing is terrible or whether my sales guys are terrible, but I have what I believe to be one of the greatest games of all time, and I could only get 40,000 units. You know, and he calls in Miyamoto. Miyamoto is the guy who made Mario. Okay, he calls in Miyamoto. He goes, Miyamoto, is this a great game? And Miyamoto says, yes. Says, well, how do you know? He says, well, because all of your secretaries and your accountants are playing during lunchtime and after work. So then he calls in, Yamauchi calls in Mr. Imanishi. He does not waste any time. When he makes a decision, that's it. Mr. Imanishi was the managing director and is number 2 at Nintendo. Comes in. Imanishi, I want you to put Nintendo's seal of approval on this game. It's like, whoa, this is like the seal of good housekeeping or something, you know? Doesn't get any better than that. And one more thing, I want you to call all distributors and make them order more. I'm like, wow, this sounds like some serious action. Well, the next day, Mr. Imanishi calls me up and he said, please don't make me put the seal of Nintendo on your game, because if I put it on your game, every other publisher is going to want it on their game. I'm going to have to create a whole department of people that do nothing but figure out whether this is a good game or not. And that's, you know, a big can of worms. So please don't I will call all distributors. Okay, just call all the distributors. I thought, surely Nintendo's distribution power was going to get me to 200,000. Bottom line is I got another 30,000, so I was up to 70,000. So that was the year I released Tetris on Family Computer. That's the situation. And on the horizon, Game Boy is coming out. And Game Boy, I know this platform, black and white screen. We can't even have 20 lines of Tetris is 20 tall by 10 wide, and this thing could only do 18, but we said, okay, we can work something out here. We can still make it. And it's January, and we get word. The worst thing that could happen to your game is dumping. If a distributor has inventory and it's January, means it's after Christmas, and they haven't cleared their inventory, they want to get rid of it as quickly as possible, because so does everybody else, and you want to dump yours before they dump theirs so that you can sell through. I said to my guys, call all the distributors, tell them this game is not going to be the same pattern as any other game. People have to play it in order to propagate it. So don't dump your stock. So some of them actually listened. Come end of January, every place is sold out, and everybody's screaming for Tetris at this point. And so at the end of January, I get an order of 200,000 units. That's my second order. Yes, it's on the way. Anyway, where am I going to get $2 million? Because 200,000 units at $10 a piece. That's a cool $2 million. And the way Nintendo works is you pay them up front, and then they start manufacturing. And it takes them a couple of months to manufacture, then it ends up with distribution, and then you get paid. So 2.5 months, I needed $2 million. I'm a gaijin in Japan. Gaijin means foreigner. So gaijin in general don't have any credit rating, and so nobody's going to lend me $2 million. I managed to, or my wife managed to convince her parents to put up all of their land as collateral, and this is right at the height of the bubble, $2 million. So their house and their little factory, collateral for $2 million. I'm telling you this because of the next part of the story. I had hired an agent to get me the Game Boy rights. He's somewhere in the story, Robert Stein. And I've been communicating with Robert Stein by fax. I paid him $25,000 to be my agent, and he was going to get me Game Boy Tetris. It's February of, actually I should backtrack. January, I fly to Seattle, which is where Redmond is, which is where Nintendo of America is. And I said, Mr. Arakawa, I think that Tetris, I know you're going to release Game Boy in the US and the rest of the world, and you have a policy of including a game with every new hardware platform that you sell. Now, I think you should include Tetris. And he said, why should I include Tetris? I have Mario. And I said, if you want little boys to buy your Game Boy, include Mario. If you want everyone to buy your Game Boy, include Tetris. Those are my words. And so, of course, he calls in his expert, because he's not a gamer himself. He calls in his guys, is Tetris a great game? Yes. How do you know? Everybody's playing it. I mean, it's the same story as at Japan. And so he said, okay, well, let's work this out. And so I said, I'm going to have to go to the Soviet Union, get these rights. So to do this for you, I want a guarantee, $1 million guarantee, and I want you to pay me $1 a unit. So keep that number in mind. And we're getting close to the end of February, and my agent, I'm back in Japan, my agent is saying, yeah, I'm going to go to Russia in a couple of weeks. You know, I'm going to spend 1 week at some game show in Germany, and then I'm going to go. In the meanwhile, I get a call from Mr. Arakawa from NOA. He said, you know, somebody just came and said that they could get me the Game Boy rights to Tetris. I said, Mr. Arakawa, we made a deal. You know, I'm about to get on a plane and go get you these rights, and you're talking to somebody else too? And he said, okay, I got it. I'm not going to talk to anybody else until you go and settle it. I said, fine. Long story short, I got on a plane, I got a tourist visa, got on a plane, I ran out of time on everything. So here I am, I have no idea who I'm going to meet in the Soviet Union. I don't know anybody, literally nobody. And my idea was I was going to, I play a game called Go. It's a Japanese board game. And I thought if I meet a Go player, then they'll be my instant friend. And so I figured out where they play Go. I made an appointment to play with the third strongest Go player in the Soviet Union. Somehow this was being translated for me, and I went and played. The guy didn't speak any English. It was useless. Anyway, I hired an interpreter, and the interpreter knew everything right away, which made me suspicious. How come she knew everything? Like, I had gone to information in the hotel, and I asked for the name of the company, Elektronor Technica. No. I said, Elorg. No. And it says, come on, you know, and then she gives me the book. It's in freaking Cyrillic. I can't read anything. So I mean, and they're so unfriendly, you know, can't believe it. They're just don't want to give me any information. So I hired the interpreter, and I said, I want to find the Lord. Oh, I know where that is. Seriously? Like they couldn't find it and she knew it right away? I thought, and Alexei, oh, I'm so sorry. Alexei was supposed to be here today, but his wife had an operation, and so he couldn't make it. Instead, we've got Alexei number 2, Peter Pajitnov. Anyway, where was I? Yes. So I said, okay, well, let's go. So we drive up to a Lorg, and there's this building, and it's a Lorg. And I go to walk inside, and she said, wait, you can't go in there. I said, what do you mean you can't go in there? I said, you're here on a tourist visa. You can't go in there. You can't talk to anybody. I said, well, I didn't come all this way to stand in front of a door and then fly back to Japan to get permission to go through this freaking door. I'm going in. Are you coming with me? No. How many of you seen the movie? Okay, all right. So in the movie, she sticks with me the whole way. In reality, I go in that door. She doesn't go in with me. She says, I can't go in there because then she's abetting me breaking the law. And so anyway, I walk into this, the hallway, the lobby, and there's a little window on the side, and it's, the window is where you're supposed to present your credentials, like who's going to see who and all that kind of stuff. Guy with a hat, a uniform, waiting for me to go and present. I ignore him. I just stand in the middle of the lobby and wait for somebody to come and talk to me. I figure somebody who's brave enough to talk to me is going to speak English. Which is, of course, yeah, that's finally somebody comes to me. What do you want? And I said, well, I'm the publisher of this game, and I show the Tetris game, Tetris, and I would like to talk to someone about the Game Boy rights. She said, wait here. And a little bit later, this old man, not really old because it turns out to be my age, but I said, I'm the publisher of Tetris in Japan. And he takes my box and he looks at it. And that's the game, the family computer, the Nintendo version of Tetris. And he says, we never licensed Tetris for console to anyone. I'm going, holy shit. I'm in Moscow, and I've got $2 million worth of cartridges in production. If somebody else gets those rights, they can just tell me, no, you can't publish them, and then I'm out $2 million. I've just lost all of my in-laws' property. So anyway, so that's okay. I'm not here to talk about that. Let's talk about Game Boy. And I said, can I come back tomorrow? And I said tomorrow because I was pretty sure that the right people weren't going to be in the building right at that moment. And I didn't want to talk to an underling. I wanted to have the right people in the room. And he said, okay, come back tomorrow. That was my invitation. Come back tomorrow. So I had permission to enter the building the next day. And the next day, there were 8 people on the other side of the table. I'm sitting on this side of the table. And then it was the third degree. They were asking me all kinds of, well, it turns out they knew nothing about the game business. And they were just trying to figure it out. Because the people who had been there before, Robert Stein included, had kind of ripped them off. And their attitude was, what are the Soviets ever going to do? They don't believe in copyright, trademark. They're never going to come outside the Soviet Union and sue anybody. That's just never going to happen. So they just thought they could do anything. It turns out that in the original deal, made in I guess 6 months before I got there, they had done 2 contracts, one for the computer and one for the Commodore 64. The thing about it is, the computer meant the personal computer. In the Soviet Union, it's not personal computer, it's called a computer. Because they don't have personal property, I guess, I don't know. But it was called a computer. And so somebody saw that contract and said, oh, the computer, which means we have everything. Well, later on in court, it's clear that they intended it for it to be the personal computer. Otherwise, why would they have needed a Commodore 64 contract? They didn't need need those two contracts. Okay, so here I am in Moscow in that first meeting. One of the people on the other side of the table is Alexei Pajitnov, and I can see he's like suspicious because there other people had come before trying to hunt down the rights to Tetris, and they were just like businessmen who knew nothing about games. And after I talked for a while, he realized that I'm also a game designer, and that's what connected us. And that day, at the end of the meeting, after that 2 hours of being grilled, he came over and he said, "Let's meet tonight." And I thought, wow, that is, you know, if you talk to Alexei, he said, "Henk, you thought you were breaking the law, but I knew I was breaking the law." That's a subtle difference there. So he was breaking the law by meeting me, and yeah, we became friends pretty quickly. I visited his house, and how old were you then? Seven. Just to give you an idea of how long ago that was. So this is 1989. It's before the fall of the Iron Curtain. You can see the movie. The movie is a Hollywood version, what actually happened. I spent, gosh, I guess it's a total of 10 days in Moscow that time. At that time, to make a phone call outside the Soviet Union, it took 8 hours. So you set a phone call for midnight and you get it 8 o'clock in the morning. So I called my lawyer in Tokyo and I said, "I need a contract. This contract can't be more than 20 pages. This contract cannot use any big words because I'm going to have to explain every word in this contract. And it's going to have to be fair because I don't have time to go back and forth between us and them. We have to settle this right then and there. And you have 24 hours to do this in. And here's a fax number. I met a woman, a Japanese woman, who worked for a Japanese company that had a fax machine. Because there's no fax machine in the hotel. Oh no. All they had was a telex. Telex, which is a fancy word for telegram. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyway, got my contract, walked through the whole thing, and it was the best contract I've ever seen. And it was so easy to explain, and it covered all the bases. And Elorg used that contract as the basis for all of their future contracts. So anyway, and a week later, I'm shaking hands. I've got the Game Boy rights. And the last thing they say is, "Well, Mr. Rogers, what about the console rights? Would you like them too?" And, you know, Atari Games is a big company compared to mine. I said, "You know what? I'm going to have to figure it out, how to do this." And I called Nintendo. I said, "You know what?" I told them the situation. And they said, "You know what? We want those rights." And this is probably a longer part of the story, but Atari Games was going to make cartridges of their own without going through Nintendo. Nintendo has a monopoly. In Japan, it's easy because they can control distribution. But in the US, they had a cartridge that had a lockout mechanism. And it was patented, it was trademarked, and copyrighted. And Atari Games had found a way to get around it, and their first game was going to be Tetris. And they were in court, they were fighting this battle, but it was going to be too late. But if they had Tetris, if they could stop them with Tetris, they could stop that first game. So a month later, I was back in Moscow with the president of Nintendo and the vice president, and we locked down the console rights. And the deal was this: Nintendo, we will license Tetris worldwide for console, and we'll license you, Japan, and that will be the deal. So, if Atari Games comes after you, we will protect you. Oh, wow, okay, that sounds pretty powerful. So, long story short, that's exactly what happened. Nintendo crushed Atari Games. I got to continue publishing Tetris in Japan. At the end, we sold 2 million copies of Tetris in Japan. And Nintendo sold, I think it's like 35 million copies of Tetris on Game Boy. In the period when Nintendo was getting the console rights, what they needed, because they were going to fight a court case, is right of title all the way back to the author. And this didn't exist because there's no paperwork, because the Soviet Union didn't believe in intellectual property. So everything belonged to the people. Anyway, a document was created. It's just a couple of pages saying Alexei gives the rights to Tetris to his place of employment, the computer center of the Academy of Sciences, for a period of 10 years, starting in 1985. And that period ended in 1995. So all the contracts in the world that had to do with Tetris ended in 1995. Everybody thought the game was going to be a non-issue by 1995. I love the way people think. And so come 1995, well, before 1995, Alexei came to me and he said, you know, he calls them bandits. Ilorg, the agency that sold and helped him sell outside, they're going to claim that they have all the rights to Tetris because they managed to register the copyrights and trademarks in 60 countries. Thank you, Nintendo. Nintendo did that for them. And so because they had the copyright and the trademark in all those countries, they thought we owned Tetris. Long story short, it doesn't quite work that way. It's not just about copyrights and trademark. It's about who created the game. And so Alexei asked me to help him exercise his rights. And so come 1995, I said, Alexei and me, and then on the other side is Ilorg, we created something called the Tetris Company. How much time? Okay. The Tetris Company. And the Tetris Company worked. We were 50-50 partners with the leftovers of the Russian Ministry of Software, if you will, whatever they were. And we would share everything 50-50. Well, that worked for about 7 years. By that time, I had started my second biggest company. I watched games for mobile phones take off in Japan. And we, as a licensing company, licensed Tetris to everyone, including Nintendo, including Sony, and including a Japanese company that was selling into Japan. And they'd given us a $1 million guarantee. It's like, wow, you guys really, yes, they said, look at what Tetris did for Game Boy. That's the same thing going to happen on mobile phones. And they were right. And I tried to find a licensee in the US. And I basically sent my sales guy to a bunch of different places. And the biggest advance that we could get out of the US was $25,000 from a company called Jandat. So I said, you know what? Nobody is understanding how big this business is going to be. So I started my own mobile phone game business in Hawaii. And this time, because I'd run companies and gone through the companies growing and then shrinking and growing. This time, if somebody offers me enough money, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to sell my company. I turned down Electronic Arts 3 times while I had my publishing company, and I should have said yes each time. And I was stupid. I'm going to build this up some more. Yeah, right. So anyway, Blue Lava is the name of the company, and we were the #1 game in the US for mobile phones. 3 years later, the company that offered me $25,000 went public. They went public they got $67 million cash, and they paid me $67 million plus 4 million shares of their stock. So that stock was at $16 a share, and a year later, Electronic Arts bought them, and the $16 a share became $27 a share cash. So that was my exit strategy right there. Not 2005. So a month goes by, and I'm playing tennis. This is in Hawaii, and I'm not feeling well. Long story short, they call an ambulance. I'm in the ambulance going to the hospital for observation, and the shit hit the fan. How do I know that? The guy who was talking to me one moment, now he's in the cockpit. You know, prepare the OR, this guy's not gonna make it. I didn't hear him say that, but I could see it in his face. I'm lying down there. It says, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I haven't spent any of the money yet. And I sold my company, but of course the money was moving. Anyway, so the second thing I said, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. And I have 2 stents. What was wrong with me is I had 100% blockage of the widowmaker. That's the largest artery in your heart. 95% of the people who have that happen to them die. I didn't, obviously. That was in 2005, so almost 20 years ago. And the doctor said, don't change your lifestyle, don't change your diet, don't change your exercise, everything is fine. I said, okay, great. So I've been okay. I'm all good. Anyway, I said, the second thing I said was, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. And I didn't quite know what that meant. I'm in the recovery room now, and I'm thinking, what did I mean by that? And there's obviously something very forceful I said. So then I worked it backwards from the end of my life. What is it that's going to piss me off if I didn't do something about it by the end of my life, whenever that really is? And I started looking for my missions in life, my bucket list. My first mission came to me in the back of the newspaper. This is a Hawaii newspaper now. Hawaii, I'm in Hawaii. And it's an article towards the back by the obituaries. It says, oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. And I'm going, you fucking idiots. What are you talking about? How can we kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century? It says, well, it's ocean acidification. Ocean acidification caused by carbon dioxide being absorbed into the ocean. Carbon dioxide being caused by us. I said, well, that sounds easy enough. And the use of carbon-based fuel. So that's mission number 1, is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. And because I was living in Hawaii, I decided to do it in Hawaii first, because I believe that if you're going to ask somebody else to clean their room, you have to clean up your own room first. So I started the Blue Planet Foundation. We set about ending the use of carbon-based fuel in Hawaii. Now at the time, Hawaii spent about $5 billion a year on oil, and I don't know, less than $1 billion of coal. And out of the oil, 30% goes to jet fuel, 30% goes to ground transportation, 40% or $2 billion goes to making electricity. So $2 billion plus all the coal, let's say $2.5 billion is use fossil fuel to make electricity. So that's the biggest one. So that's what we decided to go after. Long story short, Hawaii is the first state to have a mandate of 100% renewable energy by 2045, or any date. And we followed it up by changing the business model of the utility. So they make more money by switching to renewables. They went from being our worst enemy to being our best friend. Today they sound like us. It's great. And 13 other states now have the exact same legislation, including California, including Illinois and New York. So the most populous states in the country have the same law. But even if we're completely successful in the US, we're only 4.2% of the people in the world. And everybody in the world has the right to be just like us. And so that's where the world is heading. As and when countries become middle class, they start driving cars, they start traveling international, all of that. And so we've got to do the same thing what we did that we're doing in the US for the rest of the world. So our theory of change is that we get islands to flip to 100% renewable energy, and that will cause a movement just like the movement happened within the US. So we've so far brought 18 countries, or island countries, island territories, to Hawaii to show them what we did in Hawaii, to show them the projects, and then to teach them how to work together. Because generally, we bring 4 people from each country. Someone from the government, someone from the utility, someone from the regulatory agency, and someone from the community, 4 people. And these people are people that generally don't talk to each other. And so we bring them to Hawaii, we show them everything, and then we teach them how to work together. And we give them the, how can I say, the desire to do it back home, because they can see the transformation. By the way, Hawaii is at 36% renewable energy today. So that's my mission. I'm on the mission. We've done the 18 countries, and yeah, I guess my dream is to be done with climate change in 2045. 2045 turns out to be the 100th anniversary of the United Nations. What better date to fix everything than 2045? And you know, there's enough technology. We don't need to invent anything anymore in order to make it. Well, we've got wind and solar. If you go to the mainland, this is the mainland, sorry. The mainland, wind and solar cost about 2 cents per kilowatt hour to a utility. There is no fossil fuel that can be 2 cents per kilowatt hour. It's wind, solar, and geothermal. Geothermal is the big untapped one that nobody seems to talk about, but it's there. I wanted to leave some time for questions. So how much time do we have left?
You got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, perfect. People ask me if I have hope, and the answer is no, I do not have hope. I have determination. We are going to fix this. We're going to fix everything. This is just something, it's just a decision. It's like quitting smoking or something. So, questions?
What's the name of the, 2 questions. What's the name of the movie? And did the Tetris company license the VR version of Tetris? Or a different company?
So the name of the movie is Tetris. It's on Apple TV Plus. So you're gonna have to put up with Apple TV for a month for free. And then you can unsubscribe, but you get to watch Ted Lasso as a bonus. So and the second question was
VR.
VR, yeah, sure, VR. So I would say the best version of Tetris ever is Tetris. What is it called? Tetris. The Tetris effect. There you go. So made by a guy named Mizuguchi. He's like the top multimedia guy in Japan. I brought him to Burning Man. That's like 10 years ago, I guess. And we set up a big screen. I used to have my own camp, and we had a projector with his game. But it ran on Xbox. Xbox does not survive the playa. It ran for about a half hour and died. We brought 2, so they both died.
Did you put it upside down?
I don't know. I'm not the tech guy. You had a question?
Yeah. Did you see the kids that beat Tetris?
Sorry?
Did you see the video of the kids that beat Tetris? It was last year. He got to the end of the game that it froze.
Oh, yeah, sure.
How did you feel about that?
Okay, so I feel differently about it than Alexei. Alexei says he didn't beat the game. The game is supposed to go on forever. There's a bug, and that's nobody during test play went past level 27, and you know they thought nobody's going to ever beat level 30 or even level 40. So they didn't have any data above level 40. So then the game starts like searching in garbage data for color information and so on for the next levels, and that's why the colors get all weird in the later levels. But the kids have developed a way of pushing a button faster than you physically can push the button, and that's by putting your thumb on the button and tapping your back finger so that it's going, you know, it's like machine gun fire. So you can move faster than, it's crazy. This is years and years after. This is all for Nintendo Tetris now. The original family, the NES Tetris. And they're still playing that in competitions. But yeah, we made that, I know, for me, Alexi said, oh, that's not the way Tetris is supposed to work. It's okay, it doesn't matter. You know, he's a hero. He did something like unbelievable. By the way, they figured it out that was going to happen using AI. So they knew exactly at level, I think it's 157, that it was going to crash if you made a single at level 157. So there was a competition, a bunch of kids, all trying to achieve that, and somebody did.
What's the highest level you've ever gone to?
Okay, so there's so many different versions of Tetris, but on the Game Boy, the game, you reach the end when like after each sets of levels, you get a rocket that takes off. The rocket gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the very end is the space shuttle. So I've made the space shuttle come out a bunch of times. So I don't know what score that is. So I can play Tetris, but I don't, or I didn't, and I haven't played it obsessively. Like, I'm not going to compete with those kids that are doing.
You mentioned in a private conversation that therapists are using Tetris to reduce stress and help reduce PTSD.
Yeah. I'm actually not supposed to talk to them, so don't tell anybody. But late last year, a psychotherapist came to me and said, I want to license Tetris. Psychotherapist? Says, what do you do? What are you doing? He says, well, I treat patients for trauma. And trauma? And so how does it work? He says, well, I talk to my patient about their trauma, and then I ask them, so how do you feel about that on a scale of 1 to 10? And they tell me like 10. And I said, he said, then okay, now play Tetris. And then it makes them play Tetris for a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes. Okay, I have the same question. And now it's gone from a 10 to a 3 for some reason. And nobody quite knows why that is. We're going to go into clinical trials now to figure out why. But hey, you know what? We don't care how it works. We care that it works. I mean, he had one guy who's like 50, and he was there when his father died when he was 22 years old, and he gets physical chest pains whenever he thinks about that. And afterwards, he could just talk about it like it happened to somebody else. So it somehow rewires your brain. Like you think about your trauma, and then it just removes it removes the physiological connection. Your body now connects it to Tetris or something. It scrambles it. We're building an AI psychotherapist that's going to do the AI part, and then.
So this is kind of like off topic, but have you guys noticed that a lot of new apps and games like Bubble Blaster are like copycats of Tetris, but it's not that. But they're so addicting and they get your mind off whatever. My grandmother is like 86 and she's addicted to these games that look like, and I was like, that reminds me of Tetris.
It's so hard. It's so hard to know exactly when it's a version of Tetris or whether it's something new. And they're always trying to get close. If somebody's got a game, no, I know. There's so many different versions out there, and we learn from it. If somebody else is making a significant amount of money and it's confusingly similar to Tetris, then we send them cease and desist. Because if people think they're buying Tetris and they're not, now that's false advertising. So I have fought a big battle. Tetris, when people thought anybody could just make a Tetris game for mobile phones. No, they can't. Yeah, we took that one all the way.
Awesome. Good.